Animal intelligence. One wonders what the real focus of this large scientific enterprise might be. But anyway, the results of these tests are interesting and clear. In the final analysis, subtopics to the one big topic, Westernization. Each one of these topics, even if we discuss Korean politics, one has to discuss it in terms of basically Americanization. Arms control. Here's a third in this very depressing list of global problems. Now, the arms industry, the weapons industry is huge. Okay, our topic is capital punishment. This is a beautifully controversial topic. My own thinking has evolved on this, as I used to teach discussion of it in a philosophy class that I taught 2 or 3 times. This article about choosing a mate begins very unpromisingly, but by the end reaches some interesting ideas. Some professor, U.S. professor, University of Michigan, decided to, probably a sociologist, decided to question men and women from all cultures in the world and ask them to prioritize what they looked for, what men looked for in women and what women. Cybercrime. Wow, what a good article. Probably because I'm ignorant of it, but of course. In this case, the criminals are hackers, and the hackers we know about identity crime even. That is, they steal our credit cards. This doesn't mention, but identity stealing is the most horrendous of this, where the cyber criminal assumes our identity. And okay, this segment, let's call it, deals with environmental issues, and the subject is vast, of course. In the 2 articles that I've read here, one has to do with the DMZ, and that is remarkable. Euthanasia, another very controversial issue. In my opinion, the objections to euthanasia raised here are silly, fatuous, frivolous. Religious beliefs, once again, one is assuming that one knows what God approves or disapproves of, which I find insulting. Well, this is sub-journalism. This is a letter, Dear Abby. This is low journalism. Anyway, the ideas, though, are interesting. Is the extended life expectancy of us people a good thing or a bad thing? Okay, gender equality in Korea. Of course, there is virtually none. And really, it is kind of shocking. But I would suggest our author hints at something here, implies a point which I would make a major point. Very provocative. Genetic engineering. Very provocative. The manipulation of genes to produce new kinds of plants or animals, or to alter what already exists. The discovery in the 1970s of, not of DNA itself, but of the ability to shift DNA from a frog to a bacteria. Global warming. What a painful topic, as it should be, especially for Americans. We have to admit that America is the home of, what shall we say, superfluity, too much, and waste. Superfluity and waste. Another topic that received a lot of attention 10 to 20 years ago was homelessness. And we had studies on it and TV shows dedicated to it and so forth. But it's so amorphous, it's so hard to identify, or at least for most of us. The topic is human cloning, and it certainly is a very controversial topic. The article that I've just read raises some excellent ideas and objections. Now, on the plus side, the most favorable argument, the strongest argument in favor of cloning, of human cloning, is body parts. This could save lives. Human rights for all. This is a very intelligent short article, in my opinion. This points out that I'm going to read this one set of words written by a woman, so intelligent. Our first topic, hunger and poverty. Vast, of course. I'd like to give you some background, though. A related topic, of course, is overpopulation. Okay, the subject is inside North Korea. This is always troublesome. To be fair-minded, really, one has to bear in mind the word propaganda. This article, I'm going to criticize this article for the writing first and then address the problem. The final sentence in the article states the author's point clearly. Generally, journalists don't know much. That's why they're journalists. Journalists deal in cliches, superficialities. It's rare when a journalist has some penetrating view. This article is a thoughtful, a good, well-written article, all of these are, about Korean-Japanese relations. The first article has to do with Korea's being wired. I didn't know to what degree Korea is wired until I read this, but it really is remarkable. A platitude, it's a cliche, that Korean high school students have to work so hard competing for the Sunung, the most ambitious students anyway, and then college is basically a free ride. 4 years of pleasure, dilatory and perfunctory studies. They don't have to worry. They didn't have to worry about being expelled. This article is about the Korean work ethic, like the Japanese work ethic of the 60s, let's say, 60s and maybe 70s. The workaholic Japanese and the workaholic Koreans. Our topic is the automobile culture, and everything, of course, that has happened to Korea has happened to the United States too, and some European countries. Okay, life after death. I would like, since I speak with some animation, with some energy, if not passion, on this subject, I would like to say, I'm not an atheist. Atheists are foolish too. They're making a statement that they can't possibly support, that's unsupportable. Well, I'm so happy to have read this. The topic here is morality in decline, and the author, it's O tempora, o mores, famous simple line of Cicero, a Roman orator. Oh, the times, oh, the behavior of people today. It's not the same as it was in der guten alten Zeit, as the German. Okay, this article is about North Korean refugees. Of course, the conditions are allegedly so bad. There's another article in the same book about cannibalism. It's believable that cannibalism is widespread in North Korea. This article is entitled "No More Nukes," another low use of language, and what a timely article this is. I have been hearing about this recently, but I had heard confused reports. It really is alarming. Now that medical science can determine the gender of a fetus in the womb, this article is about public demonstrations, which tend to mean street riots. A little background, briefly. When I came to Korea in 1992, during the first few years and for many years before, public demonstrations seemed, I used to regard it as Korea's national sport. Okay, I love this. But the point here is that new discoveries using the very complex technology that we have, whether astronomy or carbon dating, or just closer archaeological, computer-directed archaeological finds. It was about gender roles, or these articles, gender in Korea. Some change has occurred, certainly. Women are more likely to have jobs. On the other hand, the jobs are likely to be low-level jobs. Our topic is sex education. And this, again, this is, I think, treated well. In the U.S., this has been a fact of life in most schools for a long time, since the 1980s. This article presents a very positive, joyful, triumphant view of this phenomenon, and it raises many very good points. Kids are bored in the classroom. Kids often think the teachers aren't teaching them what they really need to know. The AIDS crisis. This article is clearly dated 2001, not long ago. I must confess, I am one, and I think most people are like me in this, who have totally forgotten about AIDS, consider it irrelevant to my life. AIDS is something that happens in sub-Saharan Africa. The exodus from Korea, the dramatically increased rate of emigration from Korea during the past 5 years now, is reason for alarm. It is alarming. But I think there are some good things about it. Our topic here is basically the influence of television on people's lives. The first article here contends that violence on TV is the single most important factor in producing violent behavior later in life. It desensitizes us, it teaches us, or it implies that this is the infotech revolution, and to a person like me, it's really amazing. The idea, of course, is that everything is digitized. That is, I send an email to you. In the past, I wrote a letter by pen, or I typed it. Those letters are there on the paper. Of course, the role of English, the necessity of learning English in the modern world, cliche after cliche. True or false? That's an interesting question. It is undeniably true. No matter in what field, unless one limits oneself to, say, Korean studies. This article is entitled "The War on Terrorism." I think we need some clarification of terms. The author of this article considers the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor an act of terrorism. Well, it seems to me there is a difference between a terrorist attack and an attack by a state, an attack of war. Here we go. This article, the author, I think, is very naive, and so naive that I wonder about his statistics. But, for example, I didn't know this, but I guess maybe Japan, during its time of occupation of China, according to this article, killed over 25 million Chinese. If that's true, or if it's anywhere. First, I'm going to comment on two diverse topics, really. The first is what's wrong with Korean democracy, and this expresses the disillusionment of most, probably, South Koreans with democracy, maybe. I don't think with democracy, but with the sloppiness. This is a very timely article. I know you're not reading these articles, so I must tell you about it. Captain Rockwood, a U.S. Army captain, complained in Haiti about the horrible conditions of a notorious prison there, where 500 men, world population. It's almost a banality. Everyone knows about it, how 2 million years ago there were perhaps 10 million of us. That population remained pretty constant for 1,900,000 years, and then at the coming of the New Stone Age, with the development of agriculture and